Stardate 4523.7. The Defiant has somehow ended up back in time in orbit around Space Station K7. We are trying to remain incognito while the crew searches for a missing Klingon agent. However, the station is dealing with problems of its own. The episode? Trials and Tribble-ations. This is the Hit or Miss Star Trek podcast. Hello and welcome to the Hit or Miss Star Trek podcast, a current mission, a 5-month exploration of time travel within the Star Trek universe. If you're a regular listener to the show, welcome back. And if you're just joining us for the first time, allow me to welcome you with an enthusiastic Klingon headbutt. Mike is once again absent from the show this week. Last I heard, he just discovered the game of Chula. So please join me in wishing Mike all our best, Ala Moraine. And fingers crossed he'll be back with us for the next recording. Fear not, though. I've got another guest with us for today's podcast, and it's a brand new face, or should I say voice, to the Hit or Miss podcast. This week, we've got with us Runa. How are you doing today, Runa?
Hi, I'm good. How are you, DK?
I'm fine, thank you for asking. How's your weekend going so far?
It's going good. Yesterday was my day of cleaning and doing errands, and today is my rest day and talking Star Trek, so that'll be awesome.
Oh, nice one. Well, as regular listeners will know, this season we're taking a look at episodes of Star Trek that deal with time travel. We've covered quite a few now, and if you check out our social media, you'll see the leaderboard as it stands. But for anyone out there who's missed an episode or would like to hear more, or maybe you missed our interview with Trek legend Fred Bronson, or the way I completely bottled my appearance on Trekker Mind, you can find the rest of this season on our YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. So if you have the time, please check them out. So, Runa, you ready to go?
I am.
Great. Well, as usual, we'll be beginning the episode with a section that invites our guests to share a little about their love of the show in a section we call Hailing Frequencies Open.
Hailing Frequencies Open, sir.
Yes. So, thank you for agreeing to join me on today's show, Runa. It's very much appreciated. And seeing as it's your first time on Hit or Miss, do you want a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I've been a Trekkie since fairly recently, about 2020, when the pandemic hit. A friend of mine had been trying to get me to watch forever.
Oh, wow.
And I am a science fiction geek. And Trek was kind of the last big thing I hadn't wandered into, mostly because I was a little bit perturbed by all of the different Treks and was unsure where to start. But I guess the pandemic gave me an excuse, and then I joined the community on Twitter, which I really liked the people there, and I was like, well, if they like the things I like, I'll probably like Trek too. So I started with Star Trek Discovery because I feel like,
Yeah.
well, I started with the Enterprise, and I wasn't feeling that right away. So then my friend was like, well, why don't you try Discovery? It's newer. You might have an easier time. So I started there. I finished, well, Discovery isn't over, but I'm caught up on there. I've watched TNG, DS9. Yeah. I'm currently watching Voyager. I'm toward the end of season 3. And then after this, I'll do TOS, and then I'll try Enterprise again. So...
Oh, wow.
And I've watched...
So you're kind of like dipping into each one.
Yes. And I've watched all the TNG movies, and then I've watched Picard and Lower Decks. Sorry, there's so many of them. I always forget.
There is. Yeah, I can understand how when you first approach it, it must seem a little overwhelming. Because there's just so much content there.
Yeah.
Was there a moment while watching it that you just thought, oh, this is it? Was there a particular moment that grabbed you while watching?
I think so after Discovery, I started with TNG because, again, Enterprise didn't quite work, but I was told that TNG might be a better introduction. And I remember watching the episode where Picard defends Data as a life form in Measure of a Man. And I think that's when I was like, okay, I'm into this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a
was,
very good episode. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
I mean, I liked it before that, but that's when I think I was sold right around that point.
Yeah. It's a bit of a on the spot question, but so far in Star Trek, do you have a favorite top 3 characters?
Characters. So my favorite show is DS9 so far. Just
Yeah.
because I just like that
Yeah.
whole atmosphere. And also my non-Trek, one of my non-Trek favorites is Babylon 5, and they both have some similarities, but they're very different, right? So I can do the show real good, but characters
Yes.
wise, there's so many. Like I like Bashir a lot. I really like well, let me see. On Voyager, I really like the Doctor. I like Michael Burnham, especially season 1 and 2 Burnham. She's kind of changing now, so I'm
Yeah.
excited to see where that goes. I like Riker, and I've enjoyed watching him appear in Picard as well. And before Strange New Worlds,
Yeah.
my favorite captain was Picard, but I think it might be Pike now. We'll see.
Yeah, Anson Mount's convinced quite a lot of people, hasn't he? He's done a bang-up job as Pike.
He really has, and he's sort of like Picard and Cisco put together for me. Like, he can be kind of touchy-feely and fatherly, but he can also just kind of bring down the hammer and do what he needs to. So I like that combo.
Yeah. Nice one. So if hand on heart, someone asked you to name your top 3 characters, who would you put up there?
Okay. I would pick probably Bashir, Kira Nerys, and Picard, probably.
Nice. I think pretty much everyone that we've had on the show, certainly since I joined, one of their favorite characters does come down to Picard. He's just such a great actor, Patrick Stewart.
Yeah, and he's so pivotal. There are so many things that involve things he did or things he was involved in, and then we get to see him 30 years in the future, which is unique. I think we might get that with Janeway and Chakotay a little bit, given Prodigy, which I'm not caught up on, but not in the way we've gotten Picard, I think.
Oh, definitely. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to season 3 of Picard. And when you do get around to Prodigy, you're in for a treat. I think the writing on Prodigy, to say that they classed it as a kids show, they've consistently had great writing throughout the series. I've not come across one episode that I class as filler as yet. So you're really in for a good story when you finally get around to watching that.
Well, maybe I'll go back to it, because when it started, I think I got about 5 episodes in, and then life got busy. So it wasn't really that I was like, okay, I'm not interested. It was more like, okay, I'll pick this up at a later point. So I do need to get back to it. What about you? Who are your 3 favorites? I'm curious.
Definitely. Oh, Mike's probably gonna lambast me for this. I'm not sure I can remember this. One of them is Picard, myself. Another is Spock, because to me Spock is Star Trek. I'm not going to say how old I am, but I believe I'm a little older than you. So I kind of grew up with the original series, and the character, I'm gonna hold off on, because I'm gonna bring him up in the hit or miss section to see what you think. And again, at this point, when Mike's doing the editing, he's going to be because I always this guy. But yes, I love this character, and everyone else probably doesn't. But yeah, my third character, I'll be getting to in a little while. So yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
Cool. Now, out of what you have seen so far, are there any top 3 episodes or movies that you think, that you would class as the best, or what you think represent Star Trek at its best?
Oh gosh, there's so many, and so many across shows. So I would definitely say, Measure of Man is a good one to show the things that the Star Trek universe tries to deal with, and the larger issues of sentience and what rights do people have, because to me that's the point of Star Trek. We're discovering these new peoples and civilizations, and we're trying not to interfere, but we're also trying to learn from them and give them respect. I think that's one. Let me think for a minute. I think TNG's got a lot of them, so I think my personal favorite was the 2-parter for season 3, where we get Locutus of Borg. I think that sets the stage for definitely. A lot of things, and is very memorable. And everybody I talked to when I was watching it, because for a while I would post kind of, okay, this is what I'm watching, these are my impressions, and everybody told me, you're so lucky we're not in the 80s, because it was almost canceled, and that was almost our cliffhanger, the first part of it. Yeah. So that one, there's one in DS9 where Kira, I think it's called Second Skin, where Kira gets turned into a Cardassian, and she kind of gets an adopted father. I think that's important for understanding your enemies. Yeah. You were going to say something?
I was going to say, I can't remember the name of that. And I'm, if anybody's listening in, I'm notoriously famous for my bad memory. So I do know which episode that you're talking about. I just can't remember the title of it at present. But yeah, that was a very good episode.
Yeah, so I mean, those, I don't know that they would be my top 3, but they would be up there. I haven't thought a lot about my absolute top 3. I've thought about my top shows overall, and maybe my Star Treks, but there's so many good episodes.
Oh, definitely. We're not short of quality material to choose from, and I'm in saying you mentioned earlier your favorite show is DS9.
Yes, definitely DS9. I think Strange New Worlds might give it a run for its money, but we'll see. I really enjoyed the first season a lot. Voyager has been a little bit slower for me, but I think it's about to pick up. I'm right now at the part where they introduced the Borg to the Delta Quadrant, so I think it's about to shift, which is great.
Yeah. I think I underwent the same impression when I first started Voyager. I think I gave up for a while, but to be honest, I gave up on DS9 at first too. I didn't think that they were for me, and now DS9 is pretty much up there. Voyager, I like it, but I don't think it's on. And anybody listening in, I'm not dissing Voyager. I still love Voyager. I just don't think it's on the same level as DS9.
Yeah, I think what's happened with Voyager is that you have some standout character. This is, again, my opinion. I think there are some great things about it, but it's not hitting for me the way, at least not yet, the way TNG DS9 did. And I think part of it is I'm very attached to the Doctor, maybe, and Janeway, and maybe Tuvok, but the rest of the cast is a little bit detached for me, and maybe that'll change.
Yeah. Yes, I mean that's understandable. There are some standout actors, as you mentioned. I mean, Tuvok. Tuvok's been consistently good. The Doctor, Janeway. I even, and I'm probably going to get a verbal kicking from Mike from this, but I even towards the end grew very, very attached towards Neelix. I just didn't like the interplay between Neelix and Kes.
Yeah, and the episode I just watched this morning, because I finally picked up my Voyager watch again this weekend after I was ill for a while, and then all these things happened. Anyway, it's been about 4 weeks, and the episode I watched this morning, Kes fell in love with a man in like a colony and was going to run off with him. And the Doctor downloaded all these new programs into his programming and ended up having a personality shift. And to me, it struck me as strange because, before this episode, she and Neelix have consistently been shown as a couple. And that is, that has its problems. But, like, Neelix wasn't mentioned at all. Everybody was understandably about Kes. But it was like this really hard turn. And I was like, what is happening? Did I miss a breakup somewhere?
Yeah. Yeah, I was never a fan of that relationship. I do think they work better as individual characters. I mean, I was never completely sold on Kes, if I'm being honest. I'm not sure they kind of knew what to do with her. I do think you will enjoy it more as it goes on.
I've heard that.
Yeah. I'm probably going to have my my Trek fan card revoked here, but yeah, I was never a huge fan of the Kes character.
I've heard that when 7-9 comes in, the tone of the show changes. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you'll like it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any out of what you have seen? Do you have any favorite time travel stories sticking with our theme for the show this season?
I really liked. Well, and I'm gonna go with what's fresh. I really liked the Picard shift this season, where they had to correct
Yeah.
the timeline, and of course that whole story was about time travel. So that's the one I remember the most, and I really liked it.
Yeah.
Especially at the beginning. Trying to think other time travel stories. Give me some examples to jog my memory.
I can't really say with regards to Voyager because again my memory for it is terrible. DS9 we looked back a couple of weeks ago with Little Green Men. Discovery we had Terra Firma, which is we kind of class it as time travel, even though it's a shift into an alternate universe. I mean, Next Generation there was, I believe, Matter of Time. The two-parter. Have you seen that one yet?
Which one?
Next Time's Arrow. The one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that the one where I meet Guinan for the first time? And
it is, yes.
Yeah. That one was wacky but fun, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a favorite of mine, but I wasn't here for the episode this season, so but yeah, I like that one. There's a really Deep Space Nine is the Visitor.
Yes, I love that. That is definitely one of my top 3 episodes. How could I forget that? That was amazing. And I didn't know
we reviewed it a couple of weeks ago, and it's still a it's still a gut punch at times watching that episode. It's not an easy watch, but it's really good.
Well, I finished. When did I finish DS9? I think I finished it this past May or April. And so I probably watched The Visitor around January. And I remember thinking I had no idea what was coming. I was like, who is this man? What part is he gonna play? And I remember sobbing like throughout the episode. And I mean, it was very emotional. But the way they did it was just superb, you know?
Yeah. It really was a great hour of television.
Yeah.
Is there anything particularly that you're looking forward to coming up in Trek?
Okay, so definitely, like you said, Picard season 3 is at the top of my list. I'm a huge fan of Terry Matalas's work, so I really am looking forward to that. Strange New Worlds, I love, and I can't wait for season 2. I think all of those actors are very interesting, and their characters are interesting. I'm continuing my Voyager watch, but I am hoping to watch all of TOS prior to Strange New Worlds season 2, because I want to be able to have some context before I watch season 2, especially with Kirk being a part of it, So those are some things I'm looking forward to. I think one of the things about Trek is that it's both something you look forward to and just a comfort. Like, you're going to see new things and explore new ideas. And to me, that's the best thing about it.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I think I think it's such a good show, and it's lasted so long simply because there is something in it for everyone.
Yes. And I think they have an infinite possibility of storylines. Like, for example, the Voyager storyline where they're in a completely different part of space. They can basically do anything, right? Because, rules are different. So I think having a series like that can kind of branch out into anything at once is great. I do wish we would get a Section 31 show, but I don't know.
I've never been a big fan of Section 31. I think they're okay in Deep Space Nine, but I'm not sure I could take a weekly show of people being, Machiavellian and filling it with subterfuge, and it's not something that appeals to me personally. I do get why people like it though. So
yeah,
I mean, they keep suggesting that it's going to happen, but as time goes by, it seems to be stuck in development hell.
I also, other thing is, I think, I am worried about that. Like, it's hard to root for people that are nefarious, right? But I also think that a show like that could span all of the shows and could visit all of these universes, because they're a group that has existed for a while and may exist, who knows, in the Discovery's in now.
Oh, so instead of say having a straight narrative, you would be interested in seeing an anthology of sorts.
Yes, I think
That's a really good idea. I'd never looked at it that way. Yeah, that would actually be interesting.
Yeah, because we'd get to see kind of the behind the scenes, and it wouldn't have to be all the time. Like, we could have stories set in a specific period, but we would get to see, there are lots of Trek episodes where you see one side, and then later in the series or later in another series, you see the other side of things. In fact, episode today is a little bit like that, where you get a different viewpoint, right?
Yeah.
But I think a Section 31 show might be able to do some of that.
That's a really interesting in prospect. You've kind of reignited my enthusiasm for it at the moment. So thank you for that.
Of course.
So what we're going to do now, we'll be taking a look at the episode proper. But as you know, our show's called the Hit or Miss podcast, and so each week we bring up a range of subjects from around the Trek universe and ask our guests what they think. Are they a hit to them, or are they a miss, and why? So, are you good to go, Runa?
I am.
Okay.
Hailing frequencies open, sir.
So we're going to go to hit or miss now, and as I said, we will ask what you feel on different subjects. And
Okay.
the first one that we're going to go to is ironic, seeing as you mentioned him earlier. We're going to go with William Riker.
I love Riker. I think he's a fellas. And I think watching his... So I guess he's a hit for me. But I liked watching his trajectory because I felt like in the beginning he was very brash. And, I mean, still following Picard's orders, but brash. And I think as TNG progresses, he gets a little bit more stop and think and, kind of work through things. And we see him in Picard sort of an older version of that. Like, he comes in to help, but he's got his own way of doing things. So I would say hit. What about you?
Oh, I've loved Jonathan Frakes as Riker for so long. I think he's a great actor. I'll be completely honest with you. When he first appeared, maybe the first couple of seasons, I wasn't sold on him. It seemed like they were trying to shoehorn that Kirk character in to, gloss over the fact that Picard wasn't the same kind of captain as Kirk. He seemed to kind of take off for me. This is going to sound incredibly superficial, but back when they gave him his beard, he seemed to mature as a character, and the writing I thought got better and better for Riker over time.
That's the running joke. TNG and Riker got better when he got a beard.
Definitely. Yeah, I think he's and I'm glad to see that he's also got a really good career on Trek and outside of Trek now, behind the camera. I mean, he's a great director.
He is.
When he first started on the episodes and First Contact, and I love seeing him, and I'm so excited for the new season. It was great to see him in Picard season 1. But yeah, I've got such respect for Jonathan Frakes. He's one of the Trek actors I've yet to meet that I still really do want to.
Same here. In the last 2 conventions I've been to, he's come up every time on Trek panels. Like, he's not in them, but the actors always address what a joy he is to work with and what a workhorse he is. So I think he is an inspiration to a lot of them,
Yeah, definitely. I hope that. I mean, did you say you've not watched Lower Decks, or you have watched Lower Decks?
I have watched Lower Decks, yes.
Yeah, it was great to see him in that too.
Yes, it was. It was.
So yeah, I'm hoping by the end of season 3 of Picard, he's still, as they say, alive and kicking and living his best life.
Well, and honestly, I think I really like, I don't know that everybody likes this, but I really like that Picard is going back to like a swan song for TNG,
Yeah.
Yeah, I really think that'll hit at my heartstrings.
Yeah, I can see a lot of people being affected by this season. So, yeah. So it's that's fantastic. So that's a definite hit from both of us. So on to the next one, and this one's actually an alien race, and you should be familiar with this one yourself. It is the Baul.
Huh. Let me wait till the. Oh. Was that the race on Kaminar? Can't remember.
It was, yes. Yes,
Okay.
it was.
Huh. Okay. So, in general, miss, but I do like that they did that story. Because, and I hope that Discovery gets back to that, in that they basically enslaved the Kelps, and that to me is very evil. But the Kelpians, or at least Saru, discovered that what they were saying was lies. And by the time you get to the current season of Discovery, the Baul and the Kelpians, if I'm not mistaken, are kind of melded into one race, right?
Yeah.
Where am I? Okay. So, I mean, as they were, it was a miss, but I appreciated that story of this subjugation and this sort of, they were almost parasites, leeching off the Kelpians. So I kind of hope they explore that and that progression more.
So to you, they're considered a soft miss?
Yes, soft miss.
Oh, okay.
What about you?
You see, I kind of like them. I know that it's part of the raison d'etre to be portrayed as a sinister kind of presence throughout the show, especially with how they related to the Kelpians in season 1.
Yeah.
Now, it's a very odd thing. I mean, I like them. I like them as a concept. It's just that we don't really know. We still don't know to this that about them. And saying that they're kind of now in season 3, and well, especially as we're in season 4, they're now sat on a council with the Kelpians, and it's a very strange sight to see these Kelpians and then the dark shapes of the Baul sat behind them. It's still to an extent as though they are kind of the overlords of the Kelpian. That's the image I picked up on. Anyway, I mean, I know they're supposed to be equal at this point, but it just did seem very,
That's interesting. I might have to go rewatch some of that just for that. That's an interesting concept. That reminds me of, you remember in Lower Decks where they just revisited those 2 planets that were visited in TNG, where one planet was sort of leeching off the other. So I feel like it's the same story, a little bit. Not quite, but a little bit.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It would be interesting to explore. I mean, we've had this thing before. There's a lot of imagery and there's a lot of concepts in Star Trek Discovery that are really good, such as Navarre, the Romulan Vulcan homeworld. Now they've come together. It would be really nice to see a lot of these things expanded on and explored. And I think that's the problem with the Baul to such an extent that they fall into that category.
And I would really like to see things like how do Kelpians deal with their change now how do they teach their young coming of age that this is going to happen? And do the Baul have similar things come from the same planet? You know?
Yeah, it would. I mean, there's so much lore to explore if they only get the chance. So yeah, I'm gonna give them a soft hit. So it kind of balances out your soft miss. So we're kind of in the middle on the bowels. It's not one way
It
or the
does.
other.
Yeah.
Right. So I'll bring up our next one, and
Okay.
this one is another character present in both TOS and Discovery. So I'd like to know what you think of this person, and this person is Harry Mudd.
Oh, he's a hit because he's so much fun to watch. You're always kind of groaning, but like sometimes you need a character just to get into the thick of things and make things go awry. And I just think he's so funny for that.
Yeah. It's a shame we haven't seen him, obviously since they went to the future. Did you see the Short Treks episode that was
Yes, I
around
thought
it?
that the short trek was great with him. And that's why I thought we were going to get more, but we haven't yet. But I'd
No.
really like them in like his descendant or something.
Yeah. Plus, there's always the chance that we could see the first few worlds now. It's taking place in that era.
That's true. We could get him there. And it would be hilarious to opposite Pike or even Spock to see what new Spock would do.
Yes. Yes. When it came to the original series, I did like the character. And I'm going back to when I was young. I thought he's a very affable, very jolly character. But rewatching the original series, he's he's a nasty piece of work. The first episode, I won't spoil it for you, but the first episode that he's in, Mudd's Women, he's not a very pleasant character at all. But I can't help but still love him.
And there are just some characters that if you met them in real life, you would not go near them, but they're fun to watch in a fictional landscape. And I think he's one of them.
Oh, definitely, yeah, definitely. So I hope we see more of Rainn Wilson in the role. Have you ever watched the animated series? Do you ever plan to watch the animated series?
I do want to watch it someday, but no, I haven't yet.
Yeah, the character actually turns up in an episode of that too, and he's voiced by I can't remember the guy's name. Forgive me, everyone out there. The same gentleman who played the character in the original series, and it's a pretty decent episode again.
Cool.
So yeah, so that's another hit on both our parts for the character of Harry Mudd, which is
Yes.
we're not doing bad. We're not doing bad today. The next one, with it being a time travel episode, obviously we're going to have to put some time travel elements in here. So the next one on our hit or miss is the Red Angel.
Okay, so I think this is a hit for me. I really liked this storyline. I thought it was a little quick in wrapping up, but I kind of like how the Red Angel left the piece to put together at the end, and how her sending back the signal was sort of the close of those first two seasons, which really felt like a prequel to me, a prologue.
Yeah. Going to what you said with regards to wrapping up, it did. I mean, I loved the mystery and I loved how it would. I loved when obviously Michael took the suit, but as you say, it did seem to be kind of wrapped up with a little bow very, very quickly. And I would have liked the mystery to have been drawn out perhaps slightly longer. I love the imagery of it. I love how it was first brought in. I love the puzzle box aspect of it. It just, yeah, I think it was just. I'm not saying it's a completely wasted opportunity, but just slightly. I think they could have maybe, drawn out the resolution a little longer to make it a bit more satisfying.
Yeah, I think you're right. The beginning mystery was so great, and it allowed you to look into, this kind of recreated background of Spock's and Michael's together. And I think it did a good job of that, as well as setting Discovery up for the next phase. But I wish we had gotten, 2 or 3 more episodes maybe to like wrap up ending and not make it so quick.
Again, it's going back to that thing that we're only on, and it doesn't seem to happen really with any of the other shows that are running currently. But there is so much to explore in the Discovery universe, and because of this, I think a lot of the time I end up coming away just wanting more of that. And again, I think it's another one of those concepts that fall into that category.
I think Discovery could benefit from a few more episodes per season to flesh out things in general. And maybe to have time to do some balance, like some funnier things or some off-the-wall things that they don't really get to do. And I think that's because they have a limited amount of time, and some pretty large concepts.
Yeah, it's something that Mike and I have talked about often. That, I mean, it's great that you have an arc, but you miss out on those interesting little character moments in those filler episodes. And
yes,
it's nice to have a bit of whimsy every now and again, like in the Strange New Worlds one where they ended up in the in M'Benga's storybook.
Yes.
And they've got such a good bunch of actors in Discovery. I think it would really benefit from that. I mean, when you're reducing Tig Notaro to just a brief appearance every so often, and she's coming out with a funny line, it would just be so great to see these character building moments. And I know we get some serious moments like with Gray. It would be nice to have a bit of comedy in there from time to time also.
Yeah. Yes, I agree.
With regards to the Red Angel, on me, it's a hit. And you think it's a hit too, yeah?
I do. Oh. I think it was great.
Cool. Okay, and our next one, which is kind of ironic because we were due to discuss this originally, I believe, but because of scheduling, it got altered around. But it's the episode from Picard Season 2, which is Assimilation.
Yes. So, let me look up real quick because I remember.
Do you want me to just give you do you want me to give you just a brief rundown? It's the episode where they just escaped from that kind of Terran Empire setting in the previous episode, and they've gone back in time to try and find out what caused the divergent timeline. And so obviously it ended with Cad trying to go and meet this mysterious person who obviously, spoilers, turned out to be Guinan, and it had Rios in the immigration center, and it had that nice little showdown between Jurati and the Borg Queen, where Jurati was ended up having to connect to her while the Borg Queen was taking over the ship.
Yeah, this was a definite hit for me. I liked all the elements of, first of all, them going back in time, the mystery of who is he going to meet, do we know them, and then even when we knew who he was going to meet, we still weren't where we were going. And then Rios in the immigration center was uncomfortable, but uncomfortable in a way that is relatable. I mean, those are questions we are facing now, and to watch him have to go through that and be questioned was uncomfortable in a good way. I can't say enough about Agnes and the Borg Queen. That whole interaction was fascinating, and I think Picard season 2 really showed that actress, and forgive me, I can't remember her name right now, but the Agnes actress, her range is just tremendous, and I think the scene episode, as well as throughout the season, really showcased that, and I enjoyed it. I remember I watched this episode twice, so I watched it again after it aired because I wanted to look for clues that maybe I missed, and it was just fascinating both times.
Yeah, it's a definite hit for me. I love this. I love the performances. I mean, me and Mike, we don't exactly see eye to eye. Mike's never been convinced. He likes the concept of Picard, but the execution, I think, sometimes falls flat for him. We ended up having a discussion about the Jurati Borg Queen a couple of weeks ago. By this point, everybody should have heard it. I'm sure it's edited down because we ended up discussing it and it got quite heated for about 30 minutes. But yeah, I loved Picard, and I think the interplay between Annie Wershing as the Borg Queen and Alison Pill. I was racking my brains for Jurati's
That's
actress,
her name.
but yeah, Alison Pill. I thought they were fantastic, and I love how she went through all of that, and by the end, Picard's asked if she's okay, and she was close to death's door, and she still refers to Picard as Mister, and I just think she's such an adorable character. And there's not one member of this cast. I can't really say a lot about Elnor because Elnor wasn't in this season that much, but all the original characters such as Jurati, Rios, Raffi. I think it's very difficult to not fall in love with these characters, and I may be right. I may be speaking from personal experience, and I think they do, back up Patrick Stewart incredibly well. And as much as I am looking forward to season 3 with the Next Generation cast, I am a little sad that we're not going to get Jurati. Obviously, we're not going to get Rios. I mean, yes, we're going to get a bit of Raffi and Seven, and that's good. I am sad that these characters that we've kind of built up this connection to the last couple of we're not going to see. I think it's a bit of a missed opportunity, but yeah, this was one of the standout episodes for me of that season. I loved the setup, so it's a definite hit from me.
I agree too. I think this crew was very special, and they were kind of ragtag, right? They're not an official Starfleet crew, but they all have certain strengths and characteristics that make them unique to what they're doing, and backgrounds that make them unique. And I really loved the idea, and this is kind of jumping ahead, but that acting is the right person to kind of bridge the gap between the rest of the Federation work. Because she's kind of seen both sides even before she joins the Borg, and I feel like they did a good job of showing that.
Yeah, Yeah. Again, this is something that we see eye to eye on, but Mike and I, what we're kind of at loggerheads. I mean, not in a bad way.
Yeah.
I was intrigued at the prospect, and I think the setup of Jurati as the Borg Queen, I can't see it being explored personally in the series, but I think it gives a lot of potential for any expanded media, or maybe if they do a Seven and Raffi spin-off, and I'm fingers crossed, I really hope they do. I think it has a capacity for the concept to be explored in another, in another series. I really like it, and yeah, this kind of kicked the. I'm never convinced by dystopias. I'm not a big fan of the Terran Empire stories, and as much as tense as it was, the episode preceding this in Picard, where they ended up in that kind of alternate universe, that nasty
Yeah.
future, as tense as it was, I've never been a big fan of those kind of things. But this episode, the one that followed it, completely sold me on the idea of this season. So yeah, this is a big hit for me.
Well, and I feel like if they wanted to down the road, they could. We don't know how long the Agnes Queen lives, right? So they could explore her things that are set after it.
Yeah,
Because we don't
definitely.
know her life, her life expectancy.
That's very true. She could still be around by Discovery's time, because I don't believe so far there's been any mention of the Borg in Discovery in this future Federation.
No. But remember, they do have that big computer data system that they them, which could
Oh
contain all kinds of information.
yeah, it'd be interesting. It definitely really would be interesting to see explored in a future either series or, as I said to Mike, some novels or something like that. I'd love to pick up on the idea again.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's another definite hit. I like this, Runa. We're seeing eye to eye on a lot of this stuff.
We
It's
are.
good.
Sorry, Mike.
he's used to it. He's been dealing with me for so long now. He's used to someone disagreeing. Uh, although we're coming to the final one now, and this one's important. So I'm interested to know your opinion on this one. Okay, so the final one in this hit or miss is a person, technically, and this person is Vic Fontaine.
Oh, hit. I love him. Like when he
Oh,
came on,
oh,
when when he came on the scene, like, why is it the end of DS9? Like, he should have been here the whole 7 years. It would have been great.
this is going back to my three favorite characters. This is my favorite character number 3.
Yes, I can see why. He just adds, he almost becomes like the unintentional station counselor, right? I mean, I know we sort of get
Yeah,
Esri at the end, but he's sort of, people go to his bar in the holodeck when they have a problem, and he helps them out.
yeah, and it gives rise to my personal favorite Trek episode of all time. It's Only a Paper Moon.
Yeah. Yeah. He's amazing. I wish we had
Yeah,
more. Maybe they need to like find his program on one of the shows and just use it. Although I guess they might not be able to.
that would be something to. Yeah, but I mean, there's nothing stop it from maybe picking it up in one of the animated shows. Get him on
That's true.
Lower Decks or Prodigy.
I think that's a great idea. And I think what I've heard from panels um, discussing Discovery is that the actors really want to be lower deckified. So, it's possible they could do all kinds of things, mixing all kinds of things.
Definitely. And my audience should know that for me, it's just a ultimate hit for me. I grew up and my parents listened to things like, Sinatra and the Rat Pack. So Vic and his entire kind of vibe just felt like home for me. And just the fact that he was such a nice guy on top of it, I love him.
Well, and DS9 being a Cardassian station before it was taken back by the Bajorans is I love the show in the station, but it's a rougher station, right? And the people on it toil a lot. So it's almost this contrast between this rough and tumble space and then this holodeck program that's very dressy and kind of upscale, It's really neat.
It's a nice little counter.
I kind of hope that they, in now that in Picard season 3, maybe they'll play one of his songs while Worf is there. You remember how Worf was super affected and went back to him several times after Jadzia died.
That would be a really nice little Easter egg, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You God, someone should hire you. You've got some cracking ideas for the show.
Well, I watch a lot of things.
Awesome. So that's a definite hit, yeah. And I think for the most part, I think with the one exception of the bowl, the hit or miss section this time has pretty much been a hit all the way through. So nice one on that. So we hope you out there have liked the little window that's provided into what we think are certain aspects of the franchise. Do you agree? Disagree? Please feel free to vent your spleen at us on our social media accounts. In the meantime, we're going to take a small deep dive into this week's subject of conversation. And today we'll be taking a look at the now classic Deep Space Nine episode, Trials and Tribble-ations, which was first aired on November 4th, 1996, and celebrated Star Trek's 30th anniversary with Sisko and several members of the DS9 crew transported back in time to the original The Trouble with Tribbles.
And I didn't know they did it for the anniversary. That's really cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for an episode that celebrated the anniversary, the producers had originally considered a few original series episodes, such as, and again, these are things that you've yet to experience, Runa, but A Piece of the Action and Charlie X before settling on the Tribbles classic. Now, Ira Stephen Bear initially thought DS9 would be ignored as part of the celebrations, being the middle child of the Star Trek franchise, as it were. But he was contacted by Rick Berman, and after discussing it with the show's writers, conceived the idea. Strangely enough, they were sat at a local pizza parlor discussing their ideas for the episode when they found out that Charlie Brill, the actor who played the role of Arne Darvin in the original episode 29 years earlier, was eating there at exactly the same time.
Oh my gosh.
Ira recognized him and immediately offered him the chance to reprise his role from 3 decades earlier. So, how's that for a twist of fate? Yeah.
It's amazing.
Bear commented that this episode was, at the time, the most expensive hour of television ever produced. And that wasn't just down to the FX techniques that have been made popular, obviously, by the recent movie Forrest Gump. Not only did the Enterprise and K7 sets from the original episode have to be painstakingly recreated in every detail as best they could, I believe the company that made the grating scene in engineering had discontinued production by that point. But other than that, everything was pretty much exactly as it was. But also there were the props, the costumes, the new effects shots for the exterior scenes. I mean, remember at that point, the original series had yet to be remastered. The director, Jonathan West, he used 1960s film stock due to its finer grain and color saturation, as well as using 60s lighting techniques and lenses. But then on top of all that, residuals had to be paid to every actor that appeared in the original episode.
Wow.
So yeah, that would have been quite a bill by the end of things.
But it's an anniversary episode and deserved to be elevated, you know? And I
definitely.
think they did.
Yeah. I mean, additional footage. The cool thing, additional footage shot for the original episode, but never used, was added after being found amongst the original negatives of the episode. So,
wow.
which goes to show us that never throwing anything away sometimes is a lifesaver. There's a lesson there, kids.
No. Don't tell me, Dad.
Now, the original footage was remastered, and it was seen as such an improvement that it is that inspired the subsequent cleanup and re-release of the original series episodes in remastered version. So we've kind of got a lot to be grateful for this episode.
Yeah.
Now, Sisko and Dax's reactions to first arriving on the episode were genuine. Avery Brooks and Terry Farrell weren't allowed to see the recreated Enterprise set until the filming of their characters' arrival on board, with their initial reactions filmed and included in the episode.
Oh wow, they were just blown away.
Yeah, I looked up the behind the scenes stuff, and I'd found that out. So I was watching for the reactions, and yeah, it's you're not disappointed when you see them, and you just think, oh, with noticing little things like that, you see they're just as big a bunch of geeks as the rest of us.
Yeah.
Now, the episode is filled with little Easter egg moments, but one of my favourites is the one in which, while in the bar on K7, O'Brien is convinced that a lieutenant, he's called Lieutenant Freeman, is Captain Kirk. The reason this is so amusing is that Freeman was played by actor and stuntman Paul Baxley, who frequently served as William Shatner's stunt double on the original series. Explaining
that's hilarious.
Yeah, I love that little thing.
The other hilarious thing was Julian was convinced he was his own grandpa.
Or great-grandpa. Yeah, that was like, I don't know if you've ever seen Futurama.
No, I haven't, but I've heard things.
Yeah, there are flashbacks to a certain episode of Futurama, and you know, it's instantly inside. There's a squeal of terror going on when Julian started talking about that. And finally, I mean, it's nothing to do with the production of the episode per se, but I do like the symmetry in which during the episode Dax is obviously a fangirl for Spock, and then years later Terry Farrell marries Adam Nimoy, in essence becoming Spock's daughter-in-law.
Oh, I didn't know they were married.
Oh yeah, they've been married for a few years now.
Oh wow, that's really neat.
Yeah,
that's
I love
really,
that.
Yeah, that's a cool little Easter egg. You know what was interesting to me? I didn't catch this the first time around, but I rewatched the episode recently. And so when Stranger New Worlds came out, there was a big fuss over Pike in the green uniform. And I didn't really understand what that was about, other than I guess Kirk wore it. And so this episode, when I watched it, I was like, oh yeah, there's the green shirt.
Oh yeah. Oh, you've got a lot of this kind of thing to come. Watching it's odd really, because you're kind of watching it in the correct chronological order, whereas I've watched it kind of back to front. So it must be cool to watch Strange New Worlds, and then so when you do go into the original series, you'll be thinking, oh yeah, you've got a lot of cool stuff coming up. Seriously.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Oh, nice one. Well, we'll get into the specifics of the episode in a little while.
Okay.
But do you have any general impressions? I mean, I'm guessing you watched it not long ago. Is it one that you liked before you had to look at it for coming on the show?
I did like it because I felt like here are these self-assured DS9 servicemen and women. You had Cisco, Dax. Dax was interesting in this episode because they had lived through that era, right? So for them, it was nostalgic. But for else, including Cisco, although he kind of dampened his enthusiasm, everybody else was clearly fanboying and fangirling the whole time, except maybe Worf, and maybe Odo, but everybody else was like freaking out, and it sort of humanized them a little bit more. In that we have moments like that where we're like, oh my god, that person, I've read his books or I've watched his shows, or we do that. It's cool to see our characters do that.
Definitely. I do like the fact that, Odo, normally such a hard ass, and he's just completely enamored with this Tribble.
Right. And he's holding all of them, and Worf's like, you get away from me.
Yeah. Okay, so, what we'll do...
I bought a Tribble in Chicago this year.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, and I should have brought it out for this, but it's somewhere in the other room. But it like makes little Tribble in the woods noises.
I'm dying to try and find one of those. I've got a regular Tribble, but I've been looking for one of those with the noises, and I know you can get them, but getting them over in Europe, it's a much harder prospect. So envious. What we'll do now, we'll look at the elements that made the show and see what our thoughts are. We might jump ahead or backwards as different things come up. I mean, it is a time travel show, so, come on. But we'll roughly try and look at different departments as we go. And first up is writing. And I've got to say, I mean, I've got a lot of notes. I've made a lot of notes, but in general, it's a tight script. It manages to pack a regular plot in. I mean, although it is kind of quickly forgotten, although you are kind of too busy indulging in fan service at that point, but it never feels as though it's disregarded. It's got lots of beautiful, funny little character moments. It feels longer than it is, but in a good way. It feels like they've packed so much into it that... you're wondering how this is just 45 minutes of television.
And you know what? It's almost jarring when they come back to the present several times when Cisco's talking to the investigators. You're like, oh, wait, he is telling the story, in the future.
Yeah. It's really... I thought it was funny how they were called the Dharma and Luxley, who were supposed to kind of play Mulder and Scully from the X-Files at that time. And
interesting. You get the sense that they are slightly bored, but they're trying to do their jobs.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. It's like, oh God, it's just a 9 to 5 for them, and everyone else is just like, what?
Yeah. Everyone else is like, man, you don't get to experience this. You don't understand.
Yeah. And it's and I love the little notes that they've got where Cisco brings up Kirk, and one of the agents goes, Kirk, we've got 17 discrepancies on a file of him. I just love the little lines that are scattered through the ship. They bring up Worf smells of lilac, and the other one where again, you'll not be familiar with it, but the doctor McCoy, with hands like a circle, according to Dax, had a great one of his one of his kind of catchphrase kind of things is "I'm a doctor, not a such and such doctor, not a bricklayer doctor, not a
Yeah.
all kinds of things." I do like how at this episode, and they're discussing the different uniform colors and how they've swapped. And they say to Bashir, "Don't you know that?" And Bashir goes, "I'm a doctor, not a historian."
Uh-huh. And it works because it's a callback.
Yes.
What was interesting to me, and
Yeah,
maybe you can
I love
explain
it.
this. What was interesting was, as a person who's not watched, I was confused that Dax put on a red skant instead of a blue or teal, well, bluish skant, because as science officer, she's usually in blue, right?
Yeah. Do you know? I've never it never cropped out of that. Maybe I'm not sure why that happened. Maybe Terry Farrell or Dax the character just thought they looked bad. I think when it comes to the original series, obviously the most prominent female character in that show was Uhura, who dressed in red. So maybe they were trying to do that as a callback. And
Maybe
possibly
so.
there's also the chance that the character that O'Brien and Bashir encounter in the lift, she's obviously dressed in blue, so maybe they were just trying to make Dax as a character stand apart from that character. I mean, I honestly never picked up on that fact until you just brought it up. I mean, there's a whole audience out there going now saying, "Oh, this guy's Trekkie card is revoked." But yeah, it was. I never took it. Maybe there is someone out there that knows exactly why.
Or maybe she needed to be close to operations, but I don't know why.
It's entirely possible. I mean, when it comes to communications, have we had a communications officer on board any kind of ship since Uhura? Is that considered? Well, it's not considered command, is it? It's a very interesting thing. I'm not sure, where
usually
that
it's an
falls.
ensign. Yeah, usually it's an ensign on the bridge, right? Ensign.
Yeah.
It was very blatant. So she comes out in the red and she looks great, and they all stare at her because they know she looks great. But it's juxtaposed with Julian coming out in the blue and everybody else coming out, and he's asking Miles and Cisco why their colors are switched, and they explain it to him. So that's why I was like, wait, why is she not in blue?
Yeah. If Mike were here, Mike will probably be able to answer that because the guy's an encyclopedia. But yeah, it's an interesting point. Honestly, I didn't know it, and I didn't pick up on it until you just brought it up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, did you notice anything else about the writing?
I really liked the little quips about why are these Klingons different than Worf? And Worf goes, I can't talk about it. I thought that was really clever. That was a very Klingon response.
Yeah, it was, yes. I mean, at this point, we'd not had the Enterprise storyline. I don't think you'll have reached that point, but it does end up coming up in I think it's season 4 of Enterprise, where it augments, and I think the storyline was Affliction. But it does come up, and it is explained why. Some people would say it's kind of explained unnecessarily, because at this point, Worf saying we do not discuss it, we don't like to talk about it. That's kind of all you need, really. It's just hand waved away at that point. Everybody knows it's obviously through advances in prosthetics and things since that 60s show. But I do like the fact that they're looking for Klingons, and they point out that they're sat in a bar full of Klingons, and they're all going, "Where?" And it looks round, and all the Klingons are actually sat there.
But my question is for you. My question is, didn't Enterprise take place before TOS? Or no?
It did. Yes. It does explain it. It's again it's something that didn't necessarily need to be explained.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah, it's they do go into it, and depending how you view the episodes of Enterprise, you might come away thinking, "Oh, okay, that explains that," or you might come away just groaning. It depends on your point of view on whether it's one of those things that needs to be one of those holes that need to be filled in, if you know what I mean.
No, yeah, I know what you mean, but I just think that line was super clever and funny, because even not having watched TOS,
exactly.
I knew what that was about.
Yeah,
it was kind of breaking.
I do like the fact that. Yeah, and again, it's the celebration. Anybody that's kind of watched it from the beginning, from the original series, they already kind of know why in universe these characters have ridges. So this was all you needed. This little comment that hand waved the situation away. So, and it did it in a humorous aspect, and I like it. And I also like the fact that, in the best episodes of Star Trek, the ideal way of, pretending that you're a race other than what you are by hiding anything you've got on your forehead is just put a hat on.
Yeah, that was funny that no one questioned Worf or Odo, given that they were probably different from what they'd seen before.
Yeah, and it's got other it's packed to the brim with Easter eggs, like Cisco forgetting that he actually has to use a communicator, that he's trying to tap the insignia on his shirt.
Yeah.
And when it comes to O'Brien trying to operate the lift.
Yes. That was
funny. And yeah, I again throughout the series, O'Brien and Bashir were a really good double. Again, that little kind of farcical moment where the crew member walks in and tells Bashir that his flap's open, and O'Brien's kind of looking at Bashir's flies until she points out that it's on his tricorder, and then we get the whole Bashir freaking out on the predestination paradox, and then they get in touch with them from the ship and asking him if are you ready for transport, and O'Brien's just, are we ever? Because he's just fed up of the whole freak out that Bashir's going through.
Miles is just over it, and the point where they're doing their jobs, and Julian's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "I can't figure out all these wires. They're all crisscrossed." And Julian's like, "That sounds like your work anyway."
Yes. Yeah. It's full of these awesome little moments. It's like when it's packed with Easter eggs, and for such as where they're at the console, Cisco and Dax and Kirk and Spock coming past, and Dax is just completely fangirling over Spock, and Cisco's coming, let's go.
Yeah. And then there's that weird point about the Klingons trying to eradicate the Tribbles. Joke about do Klingons tell stories about their glory over the Tribbles?
Yeah, it's kind of funny, but it's kind of horrific at the same time. It's an interesting little moment because we all see Tribbles as these cute little, maybe annoying furry little creatures, but then Worf goes into detail about this great Tribble hunt where they just went out and performed, in essence, a genocide on these creatures.
And honestly, it made me think about the end of the episode a little. Can I talk about that at all?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so at the end, you see that there are Tribbles in DS9. And so that makes you wonder. I mean, it was a play for laughs, but how did they get rid of them?
Well, that's it. To me, this is kind of they've reintroduced Tribbles to the Star Trek universe as it was because
Right.
obviously from the way Worf was talking, they were all wiped out. Now DS9's full of them. So I mean, yeah, as you say, it's a joke. It's a bit of a throwaway at the end. But and if you really think, you are trying to think, how are they going to get rid of all these Tribbles and what are they going to do? But yeah, in essence, Worf's kind of partly responsible for bringing the Tribbles back to the universe.
Right. It sort of reminds me of the dropped plot where all the bugs took over the leadership in TNG and they never talked after they got them off the Enterprise.
Yes. It it's another thing that was what we were saying earlier about concepts that are never expanded on, even though you would like them to be. Yeah, unless it's been explained away in some kind of spin-off media anyway. But I think that's good things. There's an entire universe, and there's so much there that's ripe for people to expand on him.
Right.
That brings us to the acting. Do you have any notes on the acting for this one?
Well, I think in general, they did a good job of keeping the characters true to their personalities, but thrown into this situation where they get to see some of their heroes. So I liked that they responded, again, looking at someone like Miles, who gets the job done but can be short tempered. They kept those consistent personalities, and I really liked that.
Yeah, to me, the great performances all around. They were quite understated. I mean, considering that they were taking place, in the original episode as it was, no one tries to ham it up to compete with that '60s vibe, and as a result, it kind of works. Again, as I've said, there's some great scenes between O'Brien and again with Odo and Worf. Dax is great in this. I know everybody loves Jadzia. I was never sold on Jadzia completely at the time, but I absolutely adore her in this. I think she's fantastic. And, the part where she brings up Leonard McCoy and says, "Oh, he had hands like a surgeon."
Yeah.
And you're like, "Uh-oh, you're getting into some, dangerous territory here." But I just love the whole, they all seem, they all seem to have this kind, for want of a better word, awe at making this, and as a result, for the most part, most of them, with the exception of maybe Odo and Worf, they're all completely, they are like fans at a convention. It's great to watch, but as you say, it never gets rid of the characterization that they have as a regular, and I just think they've done a fantastic job.
The other thing I loved is that Siska is very professional throughout most of this, and then at the end, he has to go talk to Kirk, and he tells him
Yes.
his signature on a roster page or whatever.
Yeah.
And I thought that was very Cisco. Like, he's going to do the job first, and then he's going to get what he wants.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you think everything's wrapped up and, saying, so that was it. And Cisco goes, well, not quite. And then you find out he's just as big a fanboy as pretty much everyone else. And I love that. Cisco is such a great character, and he's such a complex character, but I like that they gave him that moment. It would have been so easy to not deal with it and just have him, obviously running the scans in the background on the bridge while Kirk's there. But to have that little fan moment at the end, that's kind of what sold the episode for me, because anybody would be like that, really.
Well, and it juxtaposes, like, Cisco does keep mementos, right? He keeps his iconic baseball. So I like to think that somewhere he has his roster with Kirk's signature on it.
Yes. Definitely. I mean, it's the way it's done, in essence, is just it's so. I mean, we'll get to the effects in a moment, but the direction on it's. I think Jonathan West did an amazing job. I mean, the newly shot scenes,
Yeah.
they fit seamlessly with the original work, and of those that aren't slotted in to existing footage, the look and feel, it's just spot on.
They really,
I think it's, as an episode, it's pretty perfect.
yeah, they really did fit in the 60s, didn't they?
Definitely. And again, you've not got to it yet, but it was nice to see the ship so populated. I know they made a comment about it, of how wow, they really packed them in back then. But I'm thinking back to season 3 of the original series, when the budget wasn't so big, and a lot of those hallways were deserted. So going back to this, it was so great to just see, the crew walking up and down, and so many crew members walking up and down.
Yeah.
That brings us to the effects, and I don't know what you think. I think there's only one slightly wobbly scene FX wise. Other than that, it's just perfect. I think it's considering now how long ago it was, the effects are incredible.
I really think it was perfect, except for what I mentioned before. Every time they to the interrogators with Cisco, I had a moment where I just blinked, like, oh yeah, he's telling the story, But other than that, I really felt like it was seamless.
Yeah, it almost a kind of fairy tale aspect. The fact that he's narrating this story,
It does.
it's treated almost as a fantasy. But when you look at it, it kind of is. When you look back at the original series, it does evoke a lot of nostalgia, and it gives you that. Well, for me, it gives me that same kind of warm glow that I used to have. Same parent training story as a child, and I like it. It gave it, and again, going back to what we were saying about how Discovery needs those whimsical type episodes, this is a prime example of that, because there's, I mean, obviously it's going on during the problems with the Dominion, and yet they can still take time out for an episode such as this. And yes, it has stakes, not great stakes, but it does have stakes, as it were, and it's just so much fun.
Right. And I liked how, and this is probably more writing than effects, but Cisco's getting the signature was a big time no. But as far as the guys getting in the fight at the bar with the Klingons, with the TOS Klingons, I don't think that hurt continuity as much because they can be considered nondescript crew members, you know? So I really liked that they fit in enough for that to happen and still not affect the timeline.
Yeah. If anything, I mean, the original episode is just as fun as this one, but it is kind of disheartening now to when you watch the original episode that you don't spot Miles in the lineup where the crew are being told off. You don't see Dax and Cisco in the background when Kirk's on the communicator. It would be really cool, to be honest, to see a cut of the original episode with those kind of scenes in the background.
Yeah. And honestly, it made me think in like 10 years or so, when it's like, I don't know, 40 years since DS9, are they going to do something similar with somebody going on the station and splicing those things together? Because I think that would be a really good tribute to either DS9 or Voyager or even TNG, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we do have that Lower Decks and Strange New Worlds crossover coming, and I can't wait to see that. But as you say, it would be great to see, a similar thing, say, from someone from maybe Discovery going back or something like that. No, I'm not sure if Discovery would be able to do it, but yeah, it would be great. I mean, yes, I liked the. I don't think you'll have seen it yet. I like the Voyager celebratory episode. I'll not say why because I don't want to spoil it for you. Yeah, but this one is by far my favorite, and I think it's one of the all-time classic episodes of Deep Space Nine.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
I mean, and when it comes to things like the Enterprise, this was before the remasters, so up until this point, it's never looked so good. I get kind of it sounds incredibly sad, but I do kind of get misty-eyed when the interference on the screen clears and the 1701 is there.
Yeah, I imagine that's very nostalgic, and I think I'm gonna have the opposite effect when I watch the original episode. I'll be like, "Hey, I saw this before," but in the
yeah.
I told a friend I was doing this, and he was like, "Did you do your research and watch the original episode?" And I was like, "No." And then I wished I had, but
Oh well, but you've still got it to come. So I mean, you will see, and hopefully you'll enjoy it, because this time, instead of like I was when I saw the Enterprise, this time you'll be watching it and you're going, "Oh, this is that scene where Odo was," or this is this is that scene where Miles was. So it will kind of work.
What I might do is when I get to it and I watch it, I might watch this one right after, just for fun.
Yeah. Well, again, you'll have to let us know what you think.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the sound design now, and it was done by Dennis McCarthy, who's obviously done a lot of the soundtracks for Star Trek throughout the years, and I think he did a great job of creating the mood of 60s Trek. He originally wanted to work this is what I found out. He originally wanted to work with the composer of the original episode, Jerry Fielding, but the producers wanted a new score. McCarthy complied, but he composed it with a Fielding mindset in his work, and I love it because the mix of DS9's contemporary score mixed with some of the original series motifs throughout the episode, I really think it helps sell the sell the episode itself.
I agree. The atmosphere felt right. I really felt like they were in the 60s. I knew they weren't from the 60s, but it really helped to like cement them in there.
Going back and rewatching some of my favorite episodes at the time throughout this season, it's kind of had a not so rose tinted spectacles effect, in that I've looked back on some of the episodes, and ones that I thought were fantastic I've not enjoyed as much this time. But this episode, it still holds its own, and I just think it's fun from beginning to end. I mean, I'm not going to say it's 100% perfect. It's the best thing of all time in Trek. There are a couple of minor scenes where I think it could have been edited slightly, but I'm looking at that from a current day viewpoint, and obviously we're used to a lot faster pacing even now compared to what we were back in the 90s. But
Right.
but yeah, I just have such great fun with this episode.
Well, and honestly, I think those of us who watch a lot of space-based shows, we have this idea that sometimes weird things just happen on a starship. And I think this shows that really well. Like, all of a sudden, there's this little alien cute species that just multiplies. And
Yeah,
and you're like, of course that would happen on a starship, you know.
definitely,
And I think
definitely.
Lower Decks did a version of that with the multiplying guy when he got upset. Remember that one?
Yes, yeah. Oh God, my memory is terrible, and they only just mentioned it in the last episode. But
Yeah, and
yeah,
I just watched all of Lower Decks, which is why it's fresh for me. But like every time this guy got anxious, he would multiply, and then they
yeah,
figured out to get him to unmultiply, they had to make him angry. So they did that.
yeah, yeah. It's such a good show. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, that's, in my opinion, that's the notes I have. I mean, I've covered everything that we can within the confines of the categories that we usually have. But before we go any further, I'd just like to ask if there's anything else that you noticed or you'd like to bring up that you don't think we've touched upon. Any observations that fall outside, what we've looked at?
Not really. There's one thing I wished. I wished we had had a little bit more Kira, especially going back. I don't think she would have fangirled as much, but it would have been cool to get a Bajoran perspective from a Bajoran who had worked with Starfleet so closely, and seeing a little bit more of what happened in the past. But I understand why they couldn't do that. They had a limited time and they wanted to stick to a
Yeah.
cohesive story. Yeah.
Yeah, I
But that's
guess
it.
there's only so much you can fit in. I mean, when it came to it, the plot line for the Anne Darwin thing. I mean, yes, they went back to it, but it wasn't really what you would call a prime consideration. It was more the celebratory aspect, and yeah, I think that's possibly why that Kira didn't have that much to do. I mean, it was nice to see her. But yeah, I can. It would have been nice to get that. I mean, I don't know if they did a novelization. I wonder if if there was a novelization, if they touched upon that. If there's anybody out there that does know that, I mean, obviously, please let us know, because
Because I feel like she would have been like, wait, so you have to push this thing for the lift to go? Or she would have been like, why does engineering look like this? She would have asked those questions
yeah,
that characters. Well, I mean, Odo doesn't know, but Odo and Worf were in the bar the whole time. But I think she would have gone to the common areas
yeah.
and asked these off the wall questions.
Although that does bring up a good point. If I was ever on an away mission, spending the entire away mission in a bar would not be the worst thing.
Right. Right.
Okay, so cool. What we normally do at this point is ask you your favourite character, moment, and scene from the episode, and then we'll take a look at what the hit or miss audience had to say before we give our conclusions. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Spock analysis.
I really liked Cisco because I thought he was great in this episode in like being able to go with the flow and do what was needed. But then, like you said, we got that last moment of, oh yeah, I'm gonna get my shot to go talk to Kirk. So I really enjoyed
Yes. Yeah. I've got to be honest. We're in a complete agreement. My favorite, it was going to be O'Brien at first, because I can relate to his general confusion and bemusement at the situation he finds himself in. However, by the end, I've got to give it to Cisco. I mean, I do appreciate that, like most of us, he'd be a fanboy of Kirk, and with all the nervousness that entails, and I just love it. It's my two favorite captains together, and I don't think I could get any better than that.
Well, and I think when you think of Cisco, he is so fond of Kirk, right? But you know he hates Picard. So that's really interesting to think about, that there are people he admires. It's just that Picard, for a good reason, is one he doesn't.
Yeah, it does give it a more human side to the character, and you know, I'm not going to say that he's anyway, you know, portrayed as not being a human. You know, I mean, to me, the highlight of that entire series is the scenes between him and Cyril Lofton as Jake.
Right.
But it's just nice to see him sometimes. I always love those little moments where he's a little more relatable to me, and relatable as in, you know, where such as, you know, the episode Take Me Out to the Hollow Suite, where he's enthusing about something, and I just love it. Oh, my biggest regret is never meeting Avery Brooks. I just love Cisco. I think he's amazing. But to see him with my other favorite captain, Kirk, it's a whole other level.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you have a favorite line from the episode?
It has to be whatever line it was. I might be my own grandfather. Just because I laughed so hard. I was like, no, Julian, no.
Yeah. Oh, good. I swear you have to watch Futurama. That will take on a whole new meaning, that line.
My list is so long that I forget what's all on it. Golden age for sci-fi fantasy fans, you know?
Oh yeah,
I feel like.
Definitely. Yeah, it is. My favorite line, it's got to be Dax. The one where she says, "I remember this time. I lived in this time. It's hard not to want to be a part of it again." I mean, I don't know about you or anybody in the audience, but I think that would be a temptation for many of us should time travel be an option. It would for me.
Right. If you had a time in your life where things were very happy, I think a lot of people would want to go back to it. But that being, I think you would see it differently once you were back in it, if you got the chance, you know?
Yeah, because you'd be looking at it not through rose-tinted spectacles, as I was saying about the episode, you'd be looking at it through contemporary vision, and with all that jaded, you know, the jaded experience that comes with it. So things might not be as great as you were, but for a brief time, I'm sure, you know, you would think this is heaven.
Right.
Okay, and what about your favorite scene?
My favorite scene, let me think. Where Dax and Cisco were searching for the Tribble above the Bay Area doors, and on Kirk's. That was hilarious.
Yes, I've got exactly the same thing. I've put, it's got to be Cisco and Dax in the storage compartment. I've always found the original
Yes.
scene of Tribbles, occasionally bouncing off Kirk's head, hilarious. To have it established that they're being tossed down there by those two, again, it just adds another layer to it, and I just find it hilarious.
Yes. We seem to agree a lot.
We do. I like this. I like this. It's good. So, as I say, before we go to the conclusions, all score, we will take a look at the audience, what the audience thinks of it, in the section that we also like to call subspace communications.
Incoming transmission.
And as usual,
Okay.
we asked our listeners and those on social media what they thought of the episode. We didn't. Again, we're not getting much of a response at the moment, but considering that there's a lot of people kind of fleeing Twitter for the hills, it's not surprising. But we do have a couple here. Right, the first one we've got is Alpaca 2, who says it's such a homage to the original series. I love it. Rob Birch at Rob Birch 333 says, I think it's fun, cute, smart little throwback and celebration of Trek at its most light-hearted and absurd. But since I was never really an original series guy, it doesn't resonate for me as much as others, and that's fine. Having seen it fairly recently in a DS9 marathon, I think the effects still hold up well too. Splicing DS9 crew into the original series footage and getting the original actor in was a great touch. In my opinion, it's not DS9's finest, but I consider it its own entity, if that makes sense. Yeah, I can kind of see that, because it does, it does stand apart from the from where it is. If yeah, I can see that. I don't know what you think.
I agree as well. Yeah, I agree as well. It's sort of a special episode that is removed from the main, so it's its own thing. But that being said, it was done really well. So I agree with Rob.
Definitely. At Mangler112 on Twitter says, I thought it was okay. I never had a deep fascination with the original series. I grew up watching Voyager. And to this day, I still haven't seen all the episodes of the original series. I do love the movies of them, though. So that's fair enough. Again, we seem to have a lot of people that's not really experienced the original series as yet. So you're going to be their champion, Runa. You know this.
Yes. Well, I've heard from people that those who didn't grow up with it struggle with it because it's so different, right? But I think it's important to watch it because it is the original. And what I've been told is sometimes have it on in the background if it's an episode that seems harder to get through, because the ones that are spectacular and the characters that are spectacular are worth it, So that's my plan for when I get to it.
Definitely.
If there's an episode that's harder, I'll just have it on when I'm hours or something.
Yeah, I think that's a good plan. I mean, a lot of people sometimes they actually force themselves to sit there and pay attention to it, and oftentimes that cannot work, especially if you're not vibing with a certain episode, and it just kind of puts you off the series as a whole. You're less tempted to go back. But yeah, I think you've got a good plan there.
Yeah.
Going back to what the audience thinks, and at House of Moog, that awesome name, says, massive understatement, but for the sake of not sounding like a gushing teen girl at a One Direction concert, let's just say, and they've put a gif on with someone saying, freaking loved it. Yeah, I agree with that. And lastly, Nifty Neil at 914 Neil says, I love it. I wish for a special airing of The Trouble with Tribbles that has the additions from Trials and Tribble-ations blended in. Oh, I'm in agreement with you there, Neil.
Just like you said.
Says the fact that for Terry Farrell, yeah, and I swear I've not looked at these until now. And he also adds the fact that for Terry Farrell ended up marrying son of more handsome in person with those is too cute for words. So yeah, in general, most people seem to like it, even though, a lot of them haven't seen the original series. So yeah, so now we know what our audience thinks. It's time to go to go to our conclusions. And at this point, we normally ask our guests for their overall opinion on the episode. So, could we have your thoughts on Trials and Tribble-ations and your score out of 5 deltas for the episode?
So I loved the episode. I thought it was a lot of fun. Like you said earlier, I think it was a good pause to all the stuff going on with and we got to see our characters in a different light, but consistent with their personalities. And I really liked that. And we got some pretty funny circumstances, including Worf's reaction to the Tribbles, and Odo's too. So I would give it a 4.
Ooh,
4
nice.
out of 5.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I'll give mine. They're usually kind of long-winded, so I apologise for that. But I've put a beautiful homage to Trek for its 30th anniversary. But honestly, it's so reductive to refer to it in those terms alone. It's a fantastically written and filmed episode that's not only a perfect tribute to celebrate the franchise's history, but a fun and engaging episode in its own right. Retreads in the genre often lead to a case of diminishing returns, but this episode bucks that trend and adds to the mythos of the significance of the story in Trek lore. There are some great performances in this, but that alone doesn't exemplify just how great this hour of television is. From the writing to the costuming, lighting, cinematography, everyone is giving their best. And what results is just a love letter to the show. Occasionally, the pacing feels a little pedestrian in comparison to what we're used to today. That's just my personal criticism. But that aside, I honestly can't think of a genuine complaint. A couple of weeks ago, we did take a look at another DS9 episode that at the time I thought was enjoyable, but on rewatch found it didn't hold up as well. But this is on the other end of the spectrum. It's fun without being forced. It's filled to the brim with perfect Trek moments, and it's a genuine pleasure to watch. It's the televisual equivalent of the voyage home. It's perfectly planned, perfectly executed, and it's just a joy to watch from beginning to end. It's another jewel in the impeccable crown that is Deep Space Nine, and to me, it's one of the all-time great episodes of Trek, and I've given it 4.5 out of 5.
Nice.
Cool. So, working out the average score, that gives Trials and Tribble-ations a score of 4.25, which puts it at number 3 on the leaderboard for Hit or Miss podcast. So,
nice.
It's a pretty well loved episode. So yeah, there you have it, everyone. You've heard our thoughts on the show. What are yours? Anything you'd like to add or point out something you think we missed? If so, please contact us on our social media accounts or leave a comment on our YouTube channel. And as usual, if you've enjoyed the episode, please like, subscribe, and please share. We can only reach a wider audience with your help, and I tip my hat to you should you do so. And once again, if you listened to this and thought, hey, that sounds okay, and want to look back on any of our previous episodes, including the aforementioned interview with Fred Bronson, I guarantee that some of his stories, especially the ones involving Shatner, will put a smile on your face. Then check out our YouTube and podcast channels where any previous episode of this season and the ones that came before it can be found. Now, in our next episode, Mike and I will be joined by Mary, where we'll be taking a look at the animated series episode Yesteryear. Want to see what we think? Then please join us next week for that. And if you've got any thoughts, again, on that front, let us know via our aforementioned social media. And speaking of, if you consider yourself a diehard Star Trek fan and would like to appear on the show as a guest to talk about an episode next season, please do get in touch. We're always looking for fellow Trekkies to geek out about the show with, and you're more than welcome to join us in a hopefully relaxed atmosphere and do so. I mean, we don't bite, do we, Runa?
Nope, it was great. It was very fun, just two friends talking about Trek.
Fantastic. So exactly. So, please get in touch if you'd like to join us. And obviously, speaking of excellent guests, as is the tradition now, all that's left for me to do is to thank today's face of Hit or Miss Star Trek, and that is Runa.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, fantastic. Well, as I say, thank you for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Me too.
Yeah.
Have a great day.
I was going to ask, for the benefit of the audience out there, is there anything you'd like to plug while you're here? Anything you'd like to promote, or anything coming up to you that you want people to know about? Anywhere they can reach you?
So I would, except I just started a new Twitter to give myself a little bit of anonymity. So I'm, kind of in between given the recent changes. But I do have a Discord, and I can give you guys that. So let me just make sure I look that up real quick.
Well, don't worry. If you just send it me after the show, I'll make sure to put the link in the description so that anybody can reach that. Okay.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Nice one. So once again, allow me to extend my gratitude for agreeing to join me, and thank you to all of you out there for joining us. We hope to see you again soon. Until then, have fun out there, Trekkies, and remember, we are Starfleet. Live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper.
You have been listening to the Hit or Miss Star Trek podcast, hosted by Michael Wilson and DK. Created, produced, and edited by Michael Wilson. Additional material produced by DK. Music by Timeless Journey. More information can be found at soundcloud.com/Timeless Journey. The Hit or Miss Star Trek podcast is based on an idea by Michael Wilson and Will Templar. Follow the podcast on Twitter at HoMTrek, on Instagram at HoM Star Trek Podcast, or look for the Hit or Miss Star Trek podcast under Facebook groups. Links to all our social media accounts and more are in this episode's description. This podcast is available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Just look for Silver Screen Hit or Miss Star Trek. This has been a Mike's Podcast production, copyright 2022. Thank you for listening.